Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Before we begin, I'll go over a couple of housekeeping items. If you need any assistance throughout the presentation, please feel free to use the chat button. And if you have questions regarding the presentation, the Q&A button will be the best option for that, although you may also use chat. And we'll give you an opportunity if you'd like to ask your question live. I can unmute you as well. We will be sending out a copy of the recording and the presentation in the next day or two. That email will be coming from the IES Zoom user account, so be on the lookout for that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to today's presenter, Christy Main, who is an extension specialist for learning and organizational development with NC State's Industry Expansion Solutions. So Christy, I'll turn it over to you now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Susan. I appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody being here this fine morning. We are going to dive into talking about some motivational techniques and tips for you guys today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. You'll hold on just 1 second. Let me get this ready to roll. All right. Hope everybody's doing well this morning. Here it is. Okay, so hopefully you all are able to see that. Secure your mask first, motivating employees in a post-pandemic era and in the age of quiet quitting. That's a whole lot of words, I know, so I apologize for that. But we're going to be going through it. As I'm sure a lot of you know, motivation is down with a lot of different companies. So we thought that it'd be a great idea to meet with y'all this morning and talk about some different tips, things that we're doing at Industry Expansion Solutions, and things that hopefully you will as well. I'd love to hear from you all this morning too through chat. So make sure that you find that chat window, because as we go through, I'm going to ask you to give your thoughts on some different things. So hopefully you're able to find that. If not, please let us know. So I believe Susan already covered all these things, the housekeeping rules, if you will. So we'll just keep on moving. Just a quick slide on who we are. We're Industry Expansion Solutions at the best college on earth, NC State University. Can you tell I'm also a graduate? But we are the extension and outreach team for the College of Engineering, whose mission is to support manufacturing in North Carolina. Very important mission. My name is Christy Main. I am an extension specialist. I've been with this awesome group since October, but I actually have over 20 years experience working with the state and things like that. So I definitely know how to motivate through times where you may not have any money to give out. We always had to be pretty creative with the state government for sure. So I want to start out by asking y'all a question. How many of you recently have flown, or think back to the last time you flew on an airplane? Do you remember what they said about the oxygen mask? Does anybody, if you'll put in chat, if you remember what they said about the oxygen mask? Do you put it on yourself first? Do you do you help someone else first? What do y'all, does anybody remember that? Yes, Angela, put yours on first before helping others. Exactly. Thank you. That's where I think about that immediately when I think about motivating others. If you're not motivated yourself, it's going to be really difficult to motivate others. So as we go through this today, you'll see a lot of tips for managers. Now, if you're a frontline employee, you don't supervise others, don't be leaving us now. That's not what this is about. We all lead from different levels. So even if I'm mentioning how you motivate staff or motivate others, if you're a frontline employee, just think about how you can motivate your peers, your coworkers, and things like that. So just know if I'm mentioning management techniques, just know that, you know, from any level you can be a leader, and these tips can not only apply to people that you're helping, but also to you, because like it says here, you know, put your mask on first before assisting others. So I want to get a little pulse check here. And my wonderful friend Susan is going to bring up 2 poll questions for y'all. You'll see that there's 3 faces on the slide. We've got number 1, who's kind of frowny, not looking very happy. Number 2 is kind of in between, not so sure. And then 3, we have very smiley. Where do you think you are on this scale? So if you will, if you can find chat, put in the chat 1 if you're that frowny face, 2 if you're in the middle, and 3 if you're a smiley. And then also you'll see that there's a second question. What about the rest of your team? Where do you think the majority falls? So again, if you're a manager, go ahead and consider your staff. But if you're a frontline employee, think about your coworkers. Give y'all a moment to fill that out.
Okay, I'm gonna close the poll in 10 seconds. Okay, closing the poll and sharing results.
Great. Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you. Okay, so let's look at what we've got. We've got 50% gave the smiley face. So that is fantastic. I'm loving that. 40% were kind of in the middle, and I totally understand. And then we have 1 that's that frowny face, not very excited this morning, and that's okay. We're going to be jazzed up after this anyway. And then number 2, it looks like our teams and our peers are kind of in that same area. We got 60% with that middle of the line, and then the 40% at the smiley face level. So that sounds pretty good. Thank you so much, Susan, for bringing that up.
Yes.
So the reason I bring this up is because this correlates to some statistics that I have found. And what we found are 50% of the folks in the workforce today are not engaged. And where I'm looking at is that's that straight across line mouth, where they're not really super not motivated, not just totally disengaged, but they're not super excited to be at work either. You've got 32% that's engaged. That's pretty good. And then 18% that are actively disengaged. So what this means, the difference between not engaged and actively disengaged, we're looking at, you know, those folks that just really are outright not getting things done. This is the actively disengaged. They're not getting things done. They're outwardly showing that they're not excited to be there, missing deadlines, things like that. Whereas the not engaged, those are the ones that we really, really need to focus on, because they could go either way. If you've heard the term quiet quitting, which we're going to be talking about in a few minutes, that's where those tend to fall, the not engaged. They're not completely disengaged, where they're flat out, you know, not getting anything done, but, you know, they're not really going the extra mile either, not getting, you know, jumping out of bed in the morning to get there. So on your handouts, and I apologize if anybody registered this morning, I did send a handout last night. You're not missing a whole lot if you don't have that yet. We will be sending another copy afterwards. But if you do look at your handout, you'll see that there's some blank spaces for these specific numbers. If you're one of those that wants to fill in the blanks, I'll go ahead and let you know that these are towards the top of the first page. It says this describes. You can put 50% of the workforce, 50% of the workforce. That's that not engaged. The middle line, engaged, like I said, was sorry, I got to get back to my thing. was 32%, and the actively disengaged was the 18%. Please do let me know again in chat or in the Q&A if you have any questions that throughout. Definitely stop me at any point. And also any ideas of yours too, because I'm sure a lot of you have a lot of experience. So any ideas that you have, please do share, because that's what it's all about, learning from each other. So here's another thought here. Most employees who are not engaged or actively disengaged are already looking for another job. So I want you to pause for a second. And I'll ask too, if it looks like someone might have had a question. Not sure. Susan, interrupt me at any time if someone did. But really think about it. If you're thinking about your team that you supervise, how many of those folks are really engaged in what they do? What about your co-workers? If you're a frontline employee, think about, the others that you're around. How many of those folks are really engaged? Because honestly, if they're not engaged or actively disengaged, they most likely are going out and looking at those jobs on LinkedIn or other places. So, and you can think about it, if all of those people get a job at one time, then it's not going to be a pretty picture, right? So we want to make sure motivation is so important. So what are some signs of low motivation? So if we're trying to keep our folks motivated, keep our coworkers motivated, keep ourselves motivated, what are some signs of some low motivation? If you will, add that into chat if you have any ideas. What are some things you see with low motivation? And if you haven't found chat yet, you should have a black box. Mine comes up at the front top of the screen. Yours may be at the bottom, but there's a spot that says chat. If you click on that, it'll bring up the webinar chat. All right, some great stuff coming in. Let's see. Performing at the bare minimum. Yes, Wendy, absolutely. They're just going to do the very minimal, not attending meetings or not participating or sharing when they are there. Yes, Allison. Poor attendance. Absolutely. Negative talk about work. Yes, we can all kind of nitpick every now and then, right? But if it's constant, it's a red flag for sure. And Angela, yes, isolation, not speaking up in meetings, late, leaving early, absenteeism. Those are definitely signs. So thanks, y'all. Absolutely. You definitely know what to look for sure. So the term quiet quitting, I'm curious, how many of you have heard of quiet quitting? And you can put in chat, yes, if you have, and it's okay if you have not, because that's what we're here for. So yes, a lot of you have heard of quiet quitting. Great. Great. Yep. It has been all over the news. Absolutely. It's an interesting concept. And when I was gathering research for this webinar, I had a lot of conversations with some friends and they're like, what's quiet quitting? A lot of my friends had never heard of it. So I got plenty of practice talking about it. But quiet quitting, there's a lot of different variations on the definition, but a couple of things I found. One term said, this term called quiet quitting, where you're not outright quitting your job, but you're quitting the idea of going above and beyond. So you're there, you're showing up, but you're not really showing up with that oomph and that excitement. Not taking your job too seriously, so you're kind of there again, but it's not that important on your totem pole there. And the last one, you're still performing your duties, but you're no longer subscribing to the hustle culture mentality that work has to be your life. So this can be very telling if you have someone that in the past has been very motivated. They're sending you emails at 1 a.m. They're answering every question that you have immediately. They're very engaged. Whereas when someone is in that quiet quitting area, they're not going above and beyond. Not necessarily that it's required, but especially if you see that it's a change in someone, definitely a red flag. And yes, Allison, absolutely. They are trying to achieve work-life balance. It's a millennial thing is not always true. It's everyone. You're exactly right. You know, millennials get a bad rap. We all know that, you know, and in every generation, there's going to be some bad apples. Right. So there are some millennials that may fall into this quiet quitting area where they're showing up, they're getting their job completed, but is it at the best level that they can? Are they excited about doing it? That kind of thing. So yeah, Allison, great point. And in fact, that is kind of a nice segue into where this came from. So why this quiet quitting? Where has this concept come from? So there's three things that DDI has posed. And when I send out the handouts after class for FYI, all of these resources and things will be included there. I used a lot of different articles from especially DDI, who is a very well respected company on leadership development. So and Gallup poll, things like that. So I'll send those links out. So definitely check those for more information. But this was from one of the DDI articles I thought was interesting. The why burnout is a huge one. And I can speak to that in past jobs. You know, you go, and eventually it's got to stop somewhere, right? So folks can get burned out. So it poses a major retention risk. If people are stressed like that, they most likely will start looking for that other job, and definitely can lead to mental health and well-being concerns. So we're going to, in our tips later, I'm going to talk about how you keep that from happening. The multiple generations at work is another reason. And like Allison said, you know, we need to use caution when generalizing a generation. It's a lot of G's, but yeah, for examples, all millennials are not lazy. Just like Allison said, we have folks in every generation that struggle with this. So definitely keep that in mind. And then the third thought was a new phase of the age-old challenge, where, you know, people are feeling overworked and underappreciated. You know, when COVID happened and we all started working from home. Well, I know me as a trainer, it was insane. We geared up. It was wild. It was a wild time because everybody was at home. A lot of people weren't sure what to do, so they were looking for online training. So for a while there, we were working many hours trying to get things out. So I was definitely feeling overworked at that time. That was in a past job. My supervisor's awesome now. So but anyway, so some will act their wage, right, and do the bare minimum, meaning if they're paid a certain amount, they say, well, this is what you pay me to do. I'm not going above that, right? They're just going to do that bare minimum to get by. And that's something that we fought years forever. I'm sure the cavemen had that same issue. So keeping that in mind, paying those folks to just take that thought of money, the money off the table is the biggest way to think about for motivation with money's concerned. But here's some more stats for you. And what I'm going to do is pause for maybe 1 or 2 minutes, and I'm going to let y'all get a break from my voice for a second and check out the statistics here on this slide. And I'm going to let y'all read through those. Trying to get, let's see. There we go. I brought the circles up. So you'll see it's 40% of employees, 50, and then that last one, 61% of frontline workers. It's a little odd how the infographic is, but read through those stats. And if you'd like to unmute and talk to us about one of those, you can raise your hand. Or if you will, just enter into chat which one of those stands out to you, or do you disagree with any of those? Do you really agree and see that in your company for any of those? So I'm gonna pause for a second. Like I said, let y'all read through those and think about it and share in chat if you will. All right. So again, I'll just mention, if you will, if anybody hadn't heard, read through those statistics on the slide. And if any of them hop out at you, go ahead and let us know which one does and comment on it. If you have any thoughts on these numbers, if you disagree or agree, and if you'd like to share verbally, you can raise your hand and we can call on you to unmute. So I'll give you another minute or so to think through those and read through it. Okay, thank you. So I will start talking. And again, if y'all are still typing, you can certainly continue to do that. But yes, we have an agree, T. Thielman. Absolutely. It can be kind of surprising if you're not really familiar with these thoughts or you haven't really thought about it. But when you start thinking and start, really thinking about the folks you work with, you see very quickly that those numbers do add up as far as who's not really that engaged. We've got some great comments here. Lori said 40% of employees are leaving their jobs. Yep. I'm a regional manager, and that is a lot of hiring, training for companies to have to deal with. Yes, Lori, great point. A lot of times people look at these, motivation and stuff like that. Oh, those are just soft skills. We don't need those types of things. But it is so important to retain good talent. We really need to figure out how to keep those folks happy and engaged so they'll stay with your companies. And then we had Allison wrote some good stuff. Talent attraction and retention is definitely a theme we hear with our clients across North Carolina. As technology has changed, business processes have changed, and workforce has changed. Our talent pipelines are no longer full, and many folks are struggling to find workers to complete daily tasks. Yes. Engineering and advanced tech jobs are even more difficult because NC is still largely a rural state with many workforce challenges outside of our urban city centers. Motivation becomes key, and does hiring individuals to grow with companies or training up with long-term companies? Yes, thank you, Allison, for that. Great insights there. So yeah, since it is so hard to recruit folks, we want to be able to retain those that we have. And not only retaining those that we have, we need to prove to those that we're recruiting that we have these opportunities, these growth opportunities for them to advance, development opportunities for them to go to classes and things like that. Those can really be helpful in recruiting folks. So thank you for sharing, y'all. All right. And I don't think we had anybody with their hand raised, but Susan, as always, if you see anything, let me know. But
Not
yeah.
seeing any.
Okay, thank you. But yeah, that 61% of frontline workers say they're struggling or barely surviving at work right now. That's a tough one to read to me. 61%, more than half. So that's a pretty big number. Yes, Allison, these are transferable skills, and they're the most important to the what's in it for me. If you're not familiar with WIFM, the what's in it for me, that's the big thing to do, is at the beginning of any kind of thing, you got to make sure they know, what are they going to get out of it? Pretty much. I mean, we're as humans, we're usually selfish individuals. We want to know what we're going to get out of it, of course, right? So yeah, what's in it for me? If I come work for you, what's in it for me? Am I going to get a raise in the next 6 months? Am I going to get a huge promotion? Exactly. So I'm going to talk about a few more signs of quiet quitting. And one of them I wanted to show through images. So we've got this nice fence. And now we've got our wonderful employees. We've got here Steve and Padma. Okay. That's our employees right here. They look pretty happy, right? I think we can all agree they look pretty happy right now. Well, now they've been given their goals, and you see their expectations are a little unclear at this point. So they were excited. They went to go meet with their manager, and now it's a little blurry that they're not so sure exactly what is expected of them. To add to that, well, now they're like, what's going on here? Now we've got some blurred boundaries, you see, through the fence there. The boundaries have started to blur. So along with those unclear expectations, the manager also didn't set those boundaries and show them, this is where your job duties are. This is where mine is. Those are a little blurred. Might be within a coworker situation where two people are doing similar roles, things like that. Everything's a little blurred. So everybody's a little confused. So at that point, it really can lead to low productivity and low enthusiasm. So these were some different things that I found from that same DDI article. I thought was great. Again, I'm referring a lot to that, and I will send out that link after the class, after the webinar. But these were a few of the other things that they saw. So that one was blurred boundaries and unclear expectations that lead to low productivity and low enthusiasm. A couple other things are here on your screen, and I believe I have all those in your handout as well. I think I did. Let me make sure real quick. Oh, no, it's not. I will add that to your handout as well. I apologize. That was one of the things that I cut last minute, but I will add that to your handout. But yeah, you'll see, excessive workflow, that burnout that leads to burnout, plus that ineffective manager support can lead to avoidance and distance. Where if your manager isn't supporting you well, you tend to avoid them or even distance yourself because you're like, well, not going to get anywhere, right? Inconsistent actions. Whereas, again, that's probably from the manager's standpoint where they're treating things differently. Plus, that poor communication can lead to folks stopping to take initiative and going above and beyond. Again, that's where that quiet quitting comes into play. Those folks really aren't going above and beyond for anything. And then finally, untrustworthy leaders and incompetent managers can lead to that not sharing challenges and putting up boundaries. And I can speak to that in the past where I've had a leader that wasn't very trustworthy. It was all of us kind of unsure of their intentions, right? So untrustworthy leaders are a big red flag. I've seen that from organizational development year after year. It's nothing new, obviously. But when I hear from those frontline employees, that's one of the biggest things. When there's issues in a team, a lot of times it goes back to that leader not being exactly trustworthy or maybe incompetent as well. So really think through that. Make sure that your leaders are getting that training they need. And as I mentioned, as even frontline staff, you have the ability to lead from where you are and even suggest things to your management, so don't be afraid to share challenges, what's going on with you, and definitely don't put up those boundaries. Make sure that you have that open dialogue, that open communication, because that's where it's so important. Are there any questions so far? Or anything maybe missing on this list? I'll go back to that. Okay. All right. So now let's be positive. Let's get excited here. How about the flip side of that? What are some signs of high motivation? How do you know that folks, if you're a manager or folks on your team are motivated? If you're a frontline employee, how do you know your coworkers are motivated? Or how do you see in yourself if you're motivated? How do you feel when you're jazzed about work? So I'm going to pause for a minute and let y'all put that into chat, if you will. Some signs of high motivation. These are great. Yes. Got happy, excited from Angela. Yes. Making recommendations to improve. Wendy, that's a perfect example of a win-win. You know, when you have motivated staff, they're excited to be there. They're excited to make improvements, not only for themselves, but for the company as well. So that's even better. Allison mentioned showing up early, asking for more assignments, great collaborators, encouraging. Yes, yes, yes. Lori, happy and productive, being a team player, helping when asked. Yes, Cami. Yes, absolutely. Smiling, Mitch. Yes, laughing and small talk. You know, that makes me think of another interesting point from Gallup. They're a huge, I've probably heard of them for surveying and polls in their leadership development. When they do employee engagement, one of the big questions they'll ask on employment engagement surveys is, do you have a best friend at work? And that's always kind of been a little interesting to me. I'm like, well, you don't want to go to work to necessarily make friends, but you know what? Every job that I really enjoyed, I can say that I had some really good friends that I worked with. And it is very telling, you know, if you, like Mitch said, smiling and laughing at work, you know, we can get things done and be laughing and having a good time. You know, it doesn't have to be boring all the time. So I love that. And yes, definitely employees arriving on time as well. Definitely shows motivation there. So those are great. Thank you. So how do we get there? What do you want big impact? Let's look at these tips. And these were again from the research that I did. And I will share the articles after the webinar. But first, number one, you want to make the connection. So I'm going to also be sending y'all some different resources that I've found throughout the years that might be interesting to you. But one of the ones I like the most is Drive by Dan Pink. It's a TED Talk that he did and a book. But what I'm going to be sending you is a link to this little 12-minute quick video on YouTube that summarizes what he talks about. And he talks about motivation is 3 factors and how money is not a motivator. You know, we always assume that if our employees aren't satisfied, then they need a raise, something like that. But really, in reality, it's really more 3 things: mastery, being able to do something and do something well, learning a new skill; autonomy, being able to work on your own, having that independence; and the third thing is purpose. And that's what this comes in, where this comes into play. People need to know what they're doing actually matters. So if employees have a clear picture of what the company's purpose is and how their job duties align, they're going to be more motivated. So be sure that you link that for them if you feel like that's an issue for them. And don't be fake about it. You know, you don't need to make anything up, because I'm sure what they do matters to your overall goals and mission for that company. So, you know, try to be energetic when you're sharing that vision, authentic, you know, no fluff. Just tell them exactly how they align up to that overall goal. Very important. The next thing is build trust every day. You know, and that speaks to that the opposite side of it being untrustworthy leaders. You definitely want to build up that trust every day. Recognize people's feelings. If you are familiar with Myers-Briggs, I'm obsessed with Myers-Briggs. I love it. You might know that thinker versus feeler component, where thinkers tend to think with their head. They think more logically about the bottom line. And the feelers on the other side are more about the people's feelings. They think with their heart, more about, showing that praise and appreciation and things like that. So come up with your feeler side of things and really think about how do you recognize your employees, especially how they're feeling at the time, without, of course, crossing lines, but just tell them you're there, that you respect them, you appreciate them. It can mean so much and really does help accomplish those business outcomes in the end. The category of those quiet quitters, who we have 50% or more of our workforce now, tend to feel underappreciated. So that can be a huge thing for those folks, where, if you just show them a little appreciation, say what you do matters, it can go a long ways. So I'm going to ask y'all again, what do you do to show your employees appreciation? So I'd love if you have some things that you do, please put that in chat. I'd love to share with y'all what we are doing at Industry Expansion Solutions that I think is just so cool. You'll see on the slide that there's these little coins here. And what our management and our committee, our engagement committee did was come up with this awesome idea. If you may be familiar with the military, how they have those coins to recognize folks. Well, we got these different coins. Each of us as an employee got these coins, and their leadership, collaboration, and performance, I believe, are the three categories. And we were told that those are our coins to give out how we see fit. Obviously, it needs to be a coworker, someone with IES, but we are able to give that to an employee or a coworker that really stands out to us. So, for example, if I co-teach a class with one of my peers, I could give that person a coin and say, it was awesome collaborating with you on this project. Meant a lot, your feedback and things like that. Here's something to recognize you by. To me, that's huge. Getting feedback from my manager as well as my peers can feel so good. So that's just a really cool way that our management and our engagement committee came up with showing appreciation. So I thought that was really neat. Yes, Angela mentioned meals. Food always goes over well, right? We love to eat. I know I do. Swag, yes. Our thanks cards, gift cards, yep. Vendor bucks, that's great. Yes, absolutely. Those are awesome. We've got, okay, let's see. I handed out gloves for Valentine's Day with a tag that said, "Thank you for all you do. We love having you here." Oh, I love that. Working on another handout, tube socks that say, "You totally knock our socks off." That is too cool. Served bagels and cream cheese for the last maintenance shutdown. That is an awesome idea, T. Thilman, because it first off, I love the gloves and socks ideas. I'm definitely one for punny type things. So that makes me giggle. So I love those. And I love that you did the bagels and cream cheese during the maintenance shutdown. You made the best of that time down, right? So you're not wasting production time, excuse me, things like that. But they're getting their food. It's awesome. Great ideas. Yes, Wendy, actively caring for staff and their family. I've been in that situation before where I had sick parents, and my peers really stepped up and helped me out during that time. And that really does make you feel really good and connected to the company and overall. Yeah, Allison, I love these ideas. So, Allison, I'm expecting some socks soon. Kidding. Oh, and Angela said we gave pumpkin pies in November that had a sticker that said, "No matter how you cut it, we're thankful for you." Oh, that's so cool, Angela. I love it. I'm gonna write these ideas down afterwards. I'm gonna have to get that chat. Very cool. So yeah, obviously y'all have some great ideas. Definitely just think outside of the box. You know, a lot of companies don't have a huge amount of money to spend towards, you know, things like that, especially raises and, you know, huge gift cards or incentives. But, you know, you can think up, you know, little ways to show that appreciation. It goes a long ways. These are some DDI key principles. I won't get super into these, but I did want to share them. If you are ever interested in other leadership development or organizational development, we have a lot of different classes. I am the leadership development and organizational development extension specialist. So we have tons of classes that we can do for you and your companies. And these are the 5 key principles for our DDI classes that we teach. Maintain or enhance self-esteem, listen and respond with empathy, which sometimes is hard to do. I get it. You know, if you're not getting the results you need from your staff, and you know, it's hard to be empathetic at times, I'm sure. Ask for help and encourage involvement. Share thoughts, feelings, and rationale. So, you know, tell them how you feel about the situation to build trust, and then provide support without removing responsibility. I love that part, you know, where you're not going to say, "Oh, you're not sure. Well, I'll do it for you." No, absolutely not. You want to support them. You want to give them the tools to succeed, but they need to, you know, overall, it is still their responsibility. And yes, thank you, Allison. Sarah asked, what's DDI? Sorry, I had not mentioned that. Development Dimensions International. And yep, Allison said they're widely recognized in the industry as training partners and programs in leadership and organizational development. Yes, they're a gold standard, if you will, in the training area. We all go to, us trainers go to DDI for any of the newest statistics and newest trends. We go there, and they do have a great training program that I myself is certified to teach, and some others. That's just really good stuff, you know, and they're all built on these key principles, among with some other things. So yeah, thank you for asking that. And I apologize, I had not given that acronym yet, Sarah, because that's that's a pet peeve of mine when you get these acronyms and you're not told what it is. So thank you for asking. The third one is build a stay plan and actually carry it out. Now, I want to just say really quickly, this isn't a stay plan for those that aren't getting the job done. You know, we're not going to work hard to keep those people in place. But if you're thinking about those that are not super engaged, but they're really good employees, maybe they've just kind of started slipping off a little bit recently, their motivation is lacking. Think about these. So focus on unique and specific opportunities and find out what motivates each person. You know, we are all motivated in different ways. So you really have to have that conversation, and some ideas down here at the bottom. Identify warning signs of the quiet quitter, build a stay plan with strategies, and just ask the employee. Give them praise and appreciation, and become their advocate. Be there and let them know that you're going to be backing them, and find out how they can get motivated. And then finally, support a positive life-work balance. And yes, I did mean to say it that way. That wasn't a typo. Usually we hear the term work-life balance, right? Well, a previous supervisor of mine always said life-work balance. I thought it was really cool because she said, you know, your life is obviously very important. It doesn't come second place to anything, you know, your family and things like that. So she wanted to make sure that we had that time away from work to recharge and you know, get motivated to come back, right? So if at all possible, creating a flexible work environment that supports each employee, encourage employees to take breaks, use vacation days, and here's a biggie: lead by example. So I'm betting a lot of you on this call right now, I bet a lot of y'all skip lunch throughout the week. I bet you don't, a lot of you probably don't take 5 lunches throughout the week. You know, you're busy, and I get it. I do it too. I'm guilty of it as well. You're busy, you're trying to get things done. Yep, Angela, it's hard to just get away and have that time. But you know what? It's the best for you and your company, right? We all know this, but it's, you know, we're just trying to get things done. So we tend to skip that lunch a lot of times. But I encourage you to lead by example. Show your employees it is important to take that recharge time, and, you know, take your lunch breaks, take vacation days when needed, and really take that recharge. So, sorry, I wanted to get to this. I apologize about that. So, action planning. And again, I'm going to ask for questions here at the end as well. But any classes that I teach, or even just this short webinar, I want you to just not think about it ever again. I want you to really have something that you can hold yourself accountable and decide to do following this webinar. So this is some action planning, and you'll have this on your handout. For those that don't have it yet, I will be sending this out, but you can just jot it down on a sheet of paper if you'd like. But for those that have the handout, you have this at the end. It says start, stop, continue. So if you can, extra points if you get one for all 3, but at least try to come up with one, either something that you're going to start doing, something that you're going to stop doing. So maybe the stop could be skipping lunch. I'm going to stop skipping lunch and start taking lunch every day. Or something to continue. So maybe you're meeting with your, if you're a manager, you're meeting with your staff weekly. You want to continue that, and maybe start asking them what's your biggest motivation? What motivates you to come into the office every day? Something like that. So you could do kind of a combination of the start, stop, continue. But go ahead and take a minute to write those down. And I encourage you to pick an accountability partner. It might be that you have some folks from your company on this webinar with you today. And if so, hold each other accountable. Check in with each other, maybe after a week, maybe after a month, and say, hey, you know, your action planning from that awesome webinar we took, just being silly. You know, what have you done anything about that? Have you started something that you plan on starting? So hold each other accountable. Or maybe if you don't have an accountability partner there, ask Siri. Or if you're an Android person, ask that person. I don't know what the Siri thing is on Android, but you know, set yourself a reminder, set a task reminder in Outlook, possibly. And Bixby, thank you, Allison, Bixby. So, you know, ask Bixby or Siri to remind you, or set it up in Outlook to set your task reminder and say, you know, check back in with me in a month and see if I've started doing what I plan to start, stop, continue. I always suggest this for anything. If you go to any kind of development opportunity, hold yourself accountable so you make sure, you know, things get done. Yeah, Alexa. I forgot about Alexa. Yep, Alexa kicks you into gear. Awesome. So if anybody has something that you are planning on doing and you'd like to share, we'd love to hear that in chat. Also, if you will, any questions that you have, what questions do y'all have? You can enter those in chat. You can raise your hand if you'd like to be unmuted. What have y'all got? And also, I'll mention that my email address and phone number is there on the slide. So reach out to me at any time. I'd love to hear from you, bounce some ideas off with you, or talk about the trainings that we have.
Christy, while we wait for folks to type in their questions, I will just remind everyone that we will send out a copy of the recording as well as the presentation. I'll also be including some resources from Industry Expansion Solutions so you can get to know us a little more. That'll include how to sign up for some of our newsletters, as well as how to connect with us via social media, and a link to our Clocking In podcast. And I'd also like to take a moment to invite everyone to our annual manufacturing conference, which will be held in April 2021 in Winston-Salem at the Benton Convention Center. And our early bird registration is open now, and there'll be a link to that as well. So Chrissy, it looks like we have something in chat.
Thank you, Susan. That was great. And yes, Sarah, that was a great comment. Sarah mentions regarding motivation, don't forget us remote workers. I'm guessing it's a lot easier for us to be disengaged. You know, Sarah, that is so, so true. And when I was gathering research for this 1-hour webinar, I actually started out with a whole lot of stuff for remote workers. And because there's a lot of stuff out there. And you're exactly right. When you're at home isolated, it can be very easy to feel disengaged. So you're right. Think about ways to motivate those remote workers. You have to think about both sides of things sometimes. So you're exactly right, Sarah. Wendy said, I read about a new online platform that's designed for virtual workers, like the kitchen, to randomly talk to coworkers. That's really cool, Wendy. I love that. And yes, Allison mentioned we've focused on virtual meetups and activities like trivia, scavenger hunts, and sharing gardening tips. Yes. Okay, Wendy, you can't recall the name. I'll try to look that up and see if I can find some resources when we send that out. So Kimmy asked, what are your suggestions for times at work when someone can be completely overwhelmed and bombarded with work? That is a fantastic question, Kimmy. And I'm going to ask the group as well. What are your suggestions? What do you do? So you see someone that's completely overwhelmed and bombarded with work. Do I have any thoughts from the group? And as you guys are thinking, I'll go ahead and pipe in with my thoughts. Yes, T. Thielman said, ask if I can help. I like that, you know, offering your assistance, you know, without removing complete accountability again, or responsibility, right? Ask what you can do to help. I love that idea. You know, ask them if there's any obstacles in place too. You know, a lot of times it's that maybe the procedure. I think back to my lab days. I worked at the lab for quite a few years. You know, the procedure's outdated. Maybe they're doing too many steps, you know, so think about obstacles like that. Wendy said, suggest to eat the elephant one bite at a time. I love that. You know, being overwhelmed, a lot of times it's just because you can't really segment it. And I've had that with a previous manager. She actually took my huge project and she broke it into chunks for me. She kind of cut up the elephant, if you will, for me into small bites. And that was amazing. So talking through that possibly. I love that. Let's see. Oh, we got some good stuff popping in. Also have Tootsie Pops with a label that says, for days that suck, just know we appreciate you. I love that. And that's that one bite. How many licks does it take? You know, the one bite at a time, that could go with that as well. Allison said, focus on the next task, the next day, and things that are within your control. Eliminate the external noise and help them. Yes. So get them to focus on just that next day, you know, that it just take one day at a time, right? So and if you're a manager, eliminating that noise, that external noise for them, really helping them kind of look in. Yeah, Cammy, I love the Tootsie Pops. Yeah, that's a fun one. Yeah, Allison mentioned important to tease out the have to haves versus the nice to haves. Yes. And another thing, setting priorities. That's a big thing that I've always asked my managers. What is my priority this week? What has to be done today? Now, sometimes you have the situation where everything has to be done today. You know, that's what leads to that being overwhelmed. But, you know, the have to haves versus the nice to haves. That's a great thing to even just whiteboard it out. Great ideas. Hopefully, Kimmy, that helps. Yes, yes. And one day at a time, take one day at a time and practice self-care. Definitely encourage them to practice that self-care. Love that, Wendy. Great ideas. Awesome. Any other questions or comments? Thank you. And yes, going back to Sarah's point about the remote workers, I'm going to try to also find a resource on motivating remote workers specifically. So if you're interested in that, let me know, and I'll try to get it done before we send out these handouts. Yeah, awesome. Thank you, everybody. Well, if there's no other questions, Susan, did you have anything else, or you?
I wanted to thank you, Christy, and as Allison said, this hour did go by in the blink of an eye. Maybe we should have scheduled this for a little longer. It was a great, terrific session. Thank you, Christy, for your presentation, and thank everyone for attending. We hope to see you at a future webinar or at MFG-Con. So thanks all. Take care. Have a great day.
Thank you.